Nova Kooks.
Hello. We need just a few moments of your time.
Our podcast is meant to not only take you on our surf journey. I mess this up every time.
You pause in the same
I can't. It's because it comes out of my mouth weird. I don't know.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
Welcome, listener. You're listening to Nova Kooks. We are four East Coast surfers that don't take ourselves too seriously when it comes to surfing or other things. Hence our name, the Nova Kooks. In this podcast, you'll hear us talk about surfing on the East Coast of Canada and hear some funny surf stories from our inexperience along the way. Our podcast is meant to not only take you on our surf journey, but to also explore personal growth, adventure, and the world around us, including pop culture and other topics. Today's episode is a post-surf session episode. Some of us recently hit the waves together for the first time in a long time, so we're going to talk through our process to help destigmatize the experience for some of you listeners that may be wanting to try out surf or try other activities, but may overthink it or talk yourselves out of it. Then, of course, we'll finish up the episode with an always intriguing question from Charles. Before we begin, I am Jared. I'll be your host, and I'm seated with Charles, Josh, and David. Hey, guys.
Hey. Hi. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. It's me.
I have several questions I want you to consider.
To start off the episode, our warm-up question is, there's a focus on this episode on destigmatizing adventure experiences. So I want to ask you fellas, what is something that you can't do, won't do, or have struggled to learn and would say that you have kooked it in the process? In case that's confusing, this time I'll go first. Recently, I went on a ski trip with my family, and normally I snowboard, but this time I decided to go skiing. This is the second time I've ever gone skiing because the first time I went was on a class trip. I was the teacher and I took my class on a ski trip to a local hill here, and to sort of show them that I wasn't afraid to try something new and to try to make them feel more comfortable, I decided to ski because it's something I had never done before because, like I said, I've only ever snowboarded. And I wasn't good at it. I was really not good at it. I had a great time, but I was in the trees so often. I found it so difficult to get out of the tree line. What they usually do is they have all the kids go down the bunny hill and sort of show them the ropes, especially for those that haven't been skiing before. And then when they end up proving that they can do it, they get a little sticker on their pass so that they can go on the ski lift and go down the big hill. And of course, you know, they gave me a sticker, and then I asked, I was like, if I wasn't an adult, would you be giving me a sticker? And the the instructor was like, no, you need more time.
Was the instructor the child in Point Break who is...
Actually, they were definitely like university aged.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, thanks.
Yep.
And then, you know, I went to, like, it made me more nervous to go down the hill for the first time, and I was in the trees immediately, and the kids loved it. They thought it was hilarious because I was like, ah! But honestly, I am not a strong skier, and I'm sure, like, if I had more time, but it's just something I really struggle with. I'm just so uncomfortable in those boots. I don't know how people do it. I know I have friends that are really good at skiing, but it's something that I really struggle with.
You made a nice experience for those students, I'm sure.
Well,
they probably remember
I'm
this.
pretty sure that they will talk about the time that their teacher was sliding backwards down the hill.
That's a good moment.
I remember two kids were like, Mr. Gates, let's go do jumps. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. No, man, I was like crawling off the like snowboard park area. It was terrible. What about you, Dave?
Well, I want to talk. I was going to talk a little bit about snowboarding and just like eating it, and just like a posse of young shredders who had all the gear and were cool and knew how to snowboard really well. I'll never forget it. It was clear as day. One of them was just like, that old man just ate it. as I was like going face first down the hill. And it was there's nothing like it connect it with that kid in the surfboard shop with Keanu Reeves there, and
Point Break.
it just was a young, cool group of kids who were very very good at snowboarding, and I was the old man eating it, and I just never felt so kooky. But my real thing I want to talk about is my foray into rock climbing. Well, I should have never done that.
Oh.
I mean, it was fun going out with some buds and being outdoors. I mean, I'll never feel bad for doing that, and I'm better for it. However, I don't like heights. I don't trust some equipment, and when I get on a rope tied by someone else who I'm not quite sure I trust, and I try to climb, something happens to me, and I look like an absolute fool. I don't enjoy it. I'm scared, which is not something I usually choose to do on my free time. I remember one moment where, usually you're facing the rock that you're holding onto. I remember somehow I was backwards facing out away from the rock.
Like dangling?
Well, no, I was still kind of holding on, but not the way you're supposed to do it. And I remember my leg was shaking so hard, and everyone was calling me Elvis because it looked like I was like it just. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I here? I mean, I know I was there. It was fun. I was outdoors with buddies, but I was the biggest kook, if you will, on that rock. And I haven't gone back since, and I probably won't. And I have a lot of respect for people who can and will and do that sort of thing, but that's not my place.
You said in a past episode that you went ice climbing in Halls Harbor.
Yes.
Was it a similar experience for you?
I found ice climbing a little better. I don't know why. I think, obviously the mechanical advantage of having that, those two claws, those two axes in your hand. I just felt a little more solid for whatever reason.
Interesting.
And where I was climbing in Halls Harbor was a little less technical, whereas it was basically you make your holds because you're just jamming the ice axe in. Whereas in rock climbing, I think you have to be a little more problem solving because you have to move where there are holds in the rock. And that's just not, I just don't have the body type for that type of experience. Anyway, kook move, fun, but not fun.
Charles, you got one?
Sure. So yeah, when I was younger, I was never really very active or outdoorsy, and this is really doing outdoors things is something that I've gotten into more so when I was in my 30s. So in terms of like camping, surfing, hiking, stuff like that. And I think one of the things that we talked about when we decided to do this here podcast was an opportunity to encourage people to go out there and like try new things. And it's something that, I mean, you were kind of like speaking to it a bit there, Jared, where you kind of get into your head like, well, I'm not going to be excellent at this, so I shouldn't even bother, or just kind of getting that initial motivation to go out and do something. But I remember not that long ago, like just wanting to learn how to swim properly, but having never been to like a swimming pool, and I didn't play sports when I was younger, so I never had that gym experience of being around people that are nude. So I remember like going to the gym the first day. I'm in the locker room, putting on my swim trunks, and then I realized I don't know how to get to the pool. Well, I'm going to have to ask that naked dude in the shower, how do I get there?
There's always some older naked man too.
Yeah, and then he just told me it's through that door. And then I was just like, oh, okay, that's my shower room experience done. That was no biggie.
Check. Bucket list.
So it's all about kind of going out, doing the thing. And like even with like swimming properly, like I was just kind of like choking on water for like the first month, but I eventually got it down. And even something like this podcast, like I would consider myself to be a very introverted and private person. So doing something like this here is a challenge for myself.
You're doing great, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. And also, you've been swimming for a long time. I consider you a swimmer now.
Yeah, I consider you a swimmer.
Yeah, so
too.
it's really interesting to hear you say that you went through that evolution of like feeling like you were kooking it at the beginning.
And I think sometimes we, maybe we all get in our heads a bit where we don't like realize how far we've we've come or progressed with certain things.
Yeah. Josh.
I got to just continue on this locker room thing for a minute. But I don't know what it is with people in locker rooms. But so I'm in this gym in Vancouver, and this guy comes up beside me, and he takes his towel off, and he's completely naked. And then he goes to reach in his locker. He like bends down, looks in his locker. And I'm like, this dude's probably going to put his underwear on first. Nope. He puts his foot up on the bench and slowly pulls on his socks first, and then like puts on his t-shirt, and then puts on his underwear. And I'm just like, meanwhile, I'm sitting on the bench, and this guy's like inches from my face. Anyway, people are weird in locker rooms. So
Was he older?
oh yeah,
It's always like,
all older people love to get naked.
well, who cares anymore, right? Like,
I mean, I don't necessarily care, but like,
I might be the same when I'm older.
Inhibition's gone.
so I'm similar to you guys in that, like, I played some sports growing up, baseball, and then I kind of dropped off of that. I got into music, and yeah, so like definitely got more active as I got older. And I would say in terms of like embarrassing things or like just jumping into stuff, like it's like everything I do. Like just yesterday, I went to the gym and like I have a new workout. I was trying to figure out one of the exercises, and I swear to God, it looked like a senior citizen trying to put together furniture from IKEA. Like I could not figure it out, and I kept trying these different angles, and I YouTubed it, and I was like, I don't know how to pick up the weight in this position. So like stuff like that, but like,
Really?
yeah.
Because you're at the gym like multiple times a week, and
I could not figure this exercise out. It's crazy. But,
and you felt awkward. Did you feel like people were watching you, and you're
well, okay, so this is interesting for the story. I still feel awkward going to the gym. I'm like, I shouldn't be here. These are super active people. I'm just this, just ate 3 hot dogs before I came to the workout. Like, not really, but so it's just interesting. And I think the point of this whole conversation is like, no matter how you feel, if it's something you want to do, just go and do it. If it's me going to the gym, if it's you going surfing, if it's you going rock climbing, or if it's you going to the pool. I feel awkward to go to the pool.
So that's a perfect segue, because today, this is what we're talking about.
Next, please.
What we wanted to talk about today is basically how, we all feel this way, where sometimes we may not feel like good enough, or maybe like, oh gosh, are those waves good enough for me? Or there's a lot of people out there. How awkward do I feel? Sometimes I'll see like a van of like younger guys show up when I'm out alone at the beach, and I'll just be like, hey guys. And, they probably just think of me as like some older veteran surfer that's just coming off the waves, but like they don't know that I was just drinking water the whole time, like just getting spun around, you know what I mean? So it's all perception, and this is what I want to talk about today, is how, we're having this podcast and we're talking about, in past episodes, we've talked about, going to Costa Rica. We've talked about an LA surf trip. We're talking about like our knowledge of magic seaweed. We're talking about all these experiences that we've done. And, some of us have had success in other things like triathlons, marathons, gym moments, canoe, hiking. But we're just a bunch of dudes that are just like fumbling our way through all of it. And we've just, hit a moment in our lives where we want to experience everything we can do and seize the day, carpe diem. And yeah, that's what I think we want to talk about the most today, is just to sort of humble ourselves. I have this thought, I'll be honest. I have a little bit of this anxiety doing this podcast where, some of these local shops that we talk about, or some of like the local people will be like, what do these guys have to talk about surfing? Like, I've never seen them out at the beach. Well, that's also because we're there at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But, like, I just wonder, like, I have like negative self-talk where I'll tell a story where, who are these guys? I've never seen them before. What right do they have to like have this podcast and talk about my beach? And, well, you know what? I'm that guy that's out there trying to learn, trying my best.
And that's like who we are and who we're trying to represent and who we're trying to talk to. So
exactly. So we just really want to reiterate to you, the listener, that, we are trying our best.
I was going to say, you made a really good point about like talking about younger people being at the beach, and you're there trying to do the same thing. And like, this is something I have in my life a lot, where like there's some things I didn't do when I was younger, and now I'm interested in them when I'm older. But I'm at an age where I should be good at them. So I'm embarrassed to be starting something new, or to not be good at something at that point, or to have these like, a group of younger people that are just awesome at whatever I'm trying to do, and like having this odd nervousness about it, or like maybe even avoiding it. I'm not one to avoid things, like I'll just jump into it, but I definitely feel that way. I feel awkward being there. Like, so it's interesting. And I think for me, I'm fortunate in that I can ignore that to a certain extent. It's still there. It's not like it goes away.
I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of like why we started this whole podcast, is because we're owning up to it. Like it's okay. Like we're laughing at ourselves,
totally
calling
okay.
ourselves the Kooks, and like,
Yeah, and it applies to everything. Like, who cares? If you want to do it, do it.
And even with this podcast, we don't know what we're doing. We've tried different mics every episode. We've the first episode, we were in the wrong spot in the room, and it took me hours to try to figure out how to like get this echo out,
Yeah. And like, it's funny, the most recent thing that comes to mind is like not one specific interview, but you hear Dave Grohl a lot talk about like, just do it, just make noise, like they're talking about music.
Yeah.
And then I've heard other people in business that says like, if you're trying to do something like this podcast, like, don't wait too long to launch it. Just get it out there. Eventually you're going to move so far past the first episode that you're not going to like the first episode anymore. And if you waited until that point to start launching them, you'd never get to where you're trying to get to.
Yeah,
So
I don't know where that, you always kind of think it's like all or nothing, like you need to be perfect at what you're working at or not do it at all. And I think probably, and I don't know if it's because I'm, mid 40s now, and I'm kind of like, if not now, when, kind of like, why not do it now? Like, what are you waiting for? Sort of the carpe diem, as you alluded to earlier. But also, as my occupation as a teacher, like I'm always telling my students, like, mistakes is learning. Just try. Like, we're not expecting you to be professional and perfect right out of the gates, or at all. Like, but
I need to see your mistakes so I can help you.
just do it.
an important point there is you never need to be perfect. If you enjoy it,
that's right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
If you don't progress past being a beginner, doesn't matter.
You get some funny stories or a good experience.
But you could stay at the same skill level for another 25 years. And if you're happy.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it in one of our first episodes, how one time we went out surfing with, how I forget who I was with. I think it was with David. We went out surfing and we saw this really elderly man in a wetsuit hobbling on the rocks, because Lawrencetown has a lot of rocks on it. And I was like, how's this guy going to surf? And then we stayed and watched him, and he did a really good job. And just, Josh, you said this before once to me, that to go surfing and to go enjoy the beach, you don't have to be an active person. This could maybe be your moment to
absolutely
become that person that you're you're sitting on the beach with your family and you have that thought, you see the people out surfing. Oh, well, that can't be me because I got this and I got that. No, I have a family and I make it work. You just have to schedule time in to have those adventures and to test yourself and to push yourself. And you don't really have to push yourself that hard. Just put the wetsuit on, get in the water.
Well, and the only thing that separates you from where you are and the people you see and think you can't be is probably making a phone call.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have a board available tomorrow afternoon?
And I feel like we're kind of speaking to, this could be thought of as a metaphor too, because we're not really just talking about surfing. If you want to go rock climbing, try it out. How do you know? How do you know if you're, that afraid of heights? Maybe you will like it. Maybe you will enjoy skiing. Maybe you will enjoy going swimming laps at the pool. Maybe it feels a little awkward at first, but once you figure out the routine, you'll get there. And everybody starts somewhere, and everybody that works at those places or goes to those places know that.
Yeah.
Get out of your head.
Well, and this is my perspective, but I don't know that ever goes away. I talk about I'm big on exercise for a lot of reasons, like physical health and mental health. And like, I'm fairly consistent going to the gym. That's it's almost like a hobby. And this gets back to my first point, but like, I know enough people at the gym that when I miss time and I go back, they're like, hey, where have you been? I'm like, this came up and blah, 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 blah. But the interesting thing is I started this conversation by saying I felt awkward and out of place at the gym the other day, but I'm there enough that people know me and ask where I've been because I haven't been there. So it's like, I should be totally comfortable in that space. And there's times that I'm not. It's like,
It's funny you say that because we have a friend that we both have from high school that is a physical trainer. And I saw a post of his on Instagram recently where he was talking about his own like negative self-talk and limitations. And I found it really interesting because, this is a guy this is his job, is to be at the gym all day, every day. And he still sometimes feels like he doesn't belong there, and it's the same. I bet you like all those dudes in the car at the beach the other day that I was talking about that came out and I felt so awkward as the old guy. I bet you that all of them have similar thoughts sometimes where they're just like, what are we doing? Or,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah.
So if we're empathetic and thinking this way, then everyone out in that lineup they could all be feeling the same thing. So a nod or a smile or a, hey, how you doing?
There you are.
And, really taking that into consideration that, they might be out there with a look on their face that you take one way because you've got all these things going on. They could be feeling the exact same way. So I guess, give them a smile, like, be the leader, give them a smile. They might be feeling the same way as you,
Great
or
point.
maybe worse, or maybe something totally different.
Like, could absolutely be worse.
I don't know.
Yeah. Great point. Lead with positivity. I like it.
Why not?
Yeah. Like you're all out there trying to do the same thing, whether
That's
it's
right.
surfing or, I don't know, one of those art classes that you go to as a group. Anyway, It's all the same.
So to sort of shift a little bit, we're talking about like just sort of mentioned those surfers and that van that came that the other day. We were wanting to talk about in being intimidated by the evolution of the surfer and how like it can look intimidating, how, you see these, I just sort of think about that like stereotypical beach day with my family where I look out and I see all these people out surfing and like, they all got the long hair, they're all hanging out, laughing, having a good time. And then they come back and they're all hanging out at their little surf spot, laughing, talking about this and that. It just almost sounds like a different language. And that looks intimidating.
Oh yeah.
It does.
Well, I think it seems intimidating because we feel like we don't belong, but like we do. We belong because we want to do it.
Yep. That's right.
And now we got posters around town.
Yeah. Charles, do you have anything you want to add on like just the whole putting yourself out there and there really aren't barriers to access? You are the barrier.
Well, I always think the most important thing is just doing something. And I can remember years ago being at Lawrencetown, just out there with a friend, just to go to the beach and just seeing people that were just doing surf lessons that day. And they could just, there's these tiny waves that they were riding on. But to me, that was like, whoa, I can't believe they're doing that.
Yeah.
So it was something that like stuck in my mind where just like, oh, I want to try that someday. So it's sort of like, whenever you're not familiar with something, right, it can kind of look really impressive what someone else is able to do. Sometimes you're kind of get your head a bit about that. But yeah, it's always about kind of just doing it. And it's one of those things that like sometimes I think about. I didn't grow up with like organized sports, but I know like a lot of friends that would have played hockey when they were younger, like they play like pickup hockey right now,
Yeah.
right? And I know they go out there and they really enjoy it. Or if like, if someone like makes a nice play or someone like gets a goal, that's like a pretty amazing feeling for them. And it's a bit more normalized in a certain way. But it's also this thing where like, that feeling may feel incredible for them, but it's not like they have to share that with, it's like everyone should have been at that game the other night to see me like do this thing. So it's sort of like doing these things because you love them or you get joy from them. And I think if you try like different activities, then the ones that do mean something to you will naturally stick with. So yeah.
Dude, you get the best barrels ever, dude.
Okay, let's move on. Recently, David, Charles, and myself went on a surf trip to Martinique Beach. I think it was like at 6 in the morning. We met at a parking lot and drove out. It's about a 40-minute drive away. Why don't we talk through this trip just so that the listener, sort of bring the listener into our world of what a surf trip is and the experiences we had, but most importantly, the takeaways that we had. It was the first time that we all sort of hit the water together. I'd say the last time we all went was maybe in the fall. I don't even remember.
All three of us, I'd say fall for sure. Yeah.
And I think Charles was working one day and Josh had off in the summer that the three of us went, but it's been a long time since all four of us have gone out. Yeah, let's talk through it. Dave.
Well, it was one of those talking about magic seaweed from our last podcast. It just seemed to be lining up like Friday, Saturday, Sundays were kind of like you saw the bumps. You're like,
Yeah.
Here we go.
You started this. You texted us after you looked at that.
I was like, there's got to be something. And even if it's a little something, that's better than nothing. So, I was pretty excited. And the weekend kind of lined up. Talking about busy schedules and, working and families. And it just seemed like it was time to go. And to be honest, probably the Saturday, I think it was the Sunday we went.
Yeah.
The Saturday looked lovely. Like everything looked lovely. But the timing didn't work out. We're humans. We had stuff going on. But Sunday, we're going regardless. Woke up nice and early, caravanned out. And to be honest, when we got there and looked out, I mean, it was windy. It was whitewash.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was fun.
Yeah, you know what? Something that happens with us a lot, we go so early and normally once that sun hits the water, it changes things, right? That's an element that sort of fixes some of the problems that we see when we're going so early. But we get lucky pretty often early in the morning. But this time wasn't. It wasn't quite exactly like what the app was sort of predicting. We were hoping for a little bit better waves, but it was very messy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we anticipated that it was going to be a bit windy out there, and it was quite choppy. But I was really excited when you guys reached out because I hadn't been out yet this year, so I was excited to get out again. And especially in wintertime, water's a bit colder. I definitely don't like going out alone, so I was excited to have some buds to go with, and then something changed in my schedule, so you guys were willing to accommodate and push ahead. But yeah, once we got out there, we got that, we went that far, so there was no way we weren't going in that water. So it was pretty much a rough and rowdy.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite moments when we all go surfing together is when we all have our cups of coffee. That early in the morning, especially when we all have our cups of coffee and we stand on the boardwalk,
Just staring at it.
and we just stare at it and we sort of are just getting, I'm wondering what's going through all of our minds. But for me, I'm kind of counting between the waves just to see how often there's something that looks rideable. I'll see something that looks rideable and then I'll start counting to see how often and how hard it will be to get to that personally, if there is something there. But sometimes it's just really flat. Is there anything worth even just it's like going fishing?
I'm always evaluating. I'm like, is this worth the effort to put on my wetsuit?
You hate putting your wetsuit on.
Yeah.
For those that don't know me, I basically need a shoehorn to get my wetsuit off.
Yeah.
Because I can't reach around.
Gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always sort of a give and take. Is this worth freezing in the parking lot getting the wetsuit on? I think now I'm a little more just go.
Yeah.
Just go. You're always better off for it, just getting in, as long as there's something.
Well, I think we talked about this before, but I've surfed all kinds of different times. Some I'm like, that was awesome. Some I'm like, that sucked.
Yeah.
But the one thing I always say, and I think I've said it in a podcast already.
I think all of us sort of say this.
I always learn one thing.
Yeah.
And whether that's the way the board feels on my left heel when I catch a wave,
Yeah.
that pressure, or Jared taught me a really good tip one time. Sometimes I'm kind of maybe in the whitewash or maybe out far enough where my feet are touching the bottom. So my hands are kind of across my board. And when I see a wave coming, when I start to feel the water pull the other way against my legs, I know that's the time I want to get on my board, because it's like it's starting to like rubber band back.
Yeah, you can
and I
feel
want
it
to catch
taking-
that kind of, because I know the water's being sucked back into the wave that's about to come. And it's like that, those little subtleties.
Such a great way to start surfing. Yeah.
I guarantee you will always get one thing every time you go.
I always
And
think of the takeaway. Yeah.
Whether it's how to get your wetsuit off, I mean, that's a great one.
Yeah. Well, I'll even say like sometimes you'll like by the time you get your wetsuit on, the waves have like petered out and it's got flatter, like there's not as many waves coming at you. And once you get your wetsuit on, you gotta go.
It's too
like,
late
just
then,
go
like-
in. Yeah. And
Just go.
but there's still a takeaway, because then you can work on your paddling. You can work on softer waves and breaking through and like getting out there. And yeah, there's always something you can get from just going out. And I remember one time there was a friend who surfs. He has a family, and he lives an hour away from the beach. He lives in the valley, and he just made a rule. I go to the beach with my surfboards every Sunday. That's just the rule. And he puts his wetsuit on and he goes in every Sunday. Some Sundays are probably really great for him. Some Sundays he probably maybe doesn't put the wetsuit on, like I'm sure, but that's just the rule. He makes a trip out.
I think that's something that, you can easily take for granted, especially being in Nova Scotia or in like, fairly close to beaches that you can surf. It's just that it's an opportunity that's always open to you. And especially if you're driving from the valley, but even if you're driving like, a half an hour out to Lawrencetown or 50 minutes out to Martinique, like you've invested that amount of time that you're sort of like, why am I not going to get in the ocean? And like, even those mornings where you just go out in the ocean, you get like beat up for an hour, it still feels pretty great because, you've been up first thing in the morning in the ocean playing. So
Yeah.
Guaranteed you're going to have an afternoon nap, though.
Yeah. Unless you have a family.
Yes, then you never nap.
Then you got to grind through it.
I think anytime you have the opportunity to be in the ocean, in salt water, in nature, it's rarely going to be a negative thing. There'll be always something to take away. There's always going to be a feeling that I get when I'm in salt water. There's a magical, there's something there that is intangible that I think is good for the soul, if you will. It's always going to be something good. So just get in, just go.
I also think there's, I think we should touch on this in a future episode. But there's something to be said about open blue water and that feeling of being carried by the wave. There's been like studies for mental health and the benefits of being near open water. Like people are instantly calmed by open blue water. It might be related to those blue lights you can get when you're, especially like living up north where we are, like with sun deprived winters. But often like doctors here will prescribe putting on a blue light while you work just to sort of help get that vitamin D.
There's one sitting on the floor here beside me.
I got one in a basket at home. But I think there might be a relation to that. But also I think like I remember having a conversation with someone, and I want to research it more, but they said something about like the feeling, like there's no feeling like that, like when you catch a wave. And like this could be even just body surfing or boogie boarding, but that feeling like when you catch a wave and that wave is in control of you and you're just riding it. Like sure, you can steer on it, but like it's got you and you've got it, and there's this like weird connection with nature that happens. I sound like Patrick Swayze in Point Break right now, but
You don't know, but you got it. It's right there.
yeah, it's right there. I got it. But honestly, there's something to be said about that with mental health. Like
Totally.
Totally. There's points you like when we surf together, you guys are all still trying to catch waves and I just stop
yeah,
and I sit and I float out there. And
Feels pretty
sometimes
good.
my eyes are closed, sometimes my eyes are open, and maybe I'm done surfing for the day. But like that's all part of it. The drive is part of it. Putting on the wetsuit, looking at the surf, being in the water, catching some waves, and then even like if it was a terrible surf day, like even the calmness of getting back in the car and the quietness and like you're probably a little bit warm on the way home, like it's all part of it. It's like what brings you back. It's what grounds you. That's the mental health
Well said.
core.
Yeah. So if that doesn't help inspire you, listener, to get up and do whatever you want, whether it's surfing, skiing, running, hiking, whatever that intimidating thing is that you've had in the back of your mind.
And it doesn't have to be like a physical activity.
Yeah.
It's anything. Just get up and try.
Go record that album. Write that book.
Or start a podcast.
Or start a podcast. Nicely said. Well, I think that that does it for this episode, guys. It's that time again for the always intriguing final question from Charles. Take it away, Charles.
This is Charles.
Okay. What's more important? The process or the product? The journey or the destination?
The process or process and the journey.
You know, often teachers will say process, not product. And that's something that, have you heard that, Dave?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's something that I completely agree with, the journey. But it's interesting that you ask this question because we all get so caught up on the final, does it look glossy? Does it look good? And then, you know, we think about with media, people like there's jobs like movie critics and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To criticize that final product that I'm afraid would take away. Like just recently, a while back, the Red Hot Chili Peppers released an album, and I just think like they were they when they were doing all of their press for it, they were talking about how amazing the process was and how proud and how passionate they were about the music they created. They believed in it. But you know, then Pitchfork or whoever, like audio files that criticize, and you know, YouTubers that vlog about music, they're probably like criticizing this album and like in like 5 minutes, when these people worked like a year or whatever of their lives and went on this journey. So I think the journey, but I also want to just say it stinks that for the people that get criticized for the product in the end.
I don't know. This might be unanimous, Charles. I don't want to speak for you, but yeah, process, journey, and you know, in every regard, in you know, as a teacher, as someone who likes to try new things, it's the learning, it's the failures that you can hopefully laugh at and build on, and it's yeah, incredible. Actually, you know, it's funny you mentioned the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I could talk about them all night, but I won't. I got into Rick Rubin's socials, and he's a very interesting, creative individual and very inspirational. And he's got on his socials, he's got like quotes, and I guess he's filled with quotes because he's a very philosophical human, and is tuned into the process. And anyways, he had a quote the other day, which I can only paraphrase. I won't bring it up, but basically just like all you can see it come through, you know, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and just this idea of like, it's just about living and making mistakes and just trying and doing, which has been a theme of this podcast, and that, you know, it is the journey, it is the process, and that's life, and those are the happy moments, and those are the sad moments, but those are the moments.
Just a plug there for Rick Rubin. I don't know if you know his Broken Record podcast, but he's interviewing this month, it's all dedicated to the Chili Peppers. And
He's great.
Cool.
My whole month has been dedicated to the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
There's been so many, like I've seen recently, probably just because of the people that I follow, like music producers and stuff, but I've seen so many awesome quotes from Rick Rubin.
Yes.
Just about like, if you're a creator especially, like just, I feel like his quotes kind of let you off the hook. It's like, enjoy the process. It's about you and the process, and don't worry about everybody else. It's, yeah. And it kind of speaks to how I've always felt like there's an audience for everything.
I've only recently taken that in,
Oh, yeah.
but once you do, it's powerful.
Yeah. Charles, what's the answer to your question? Process or product?
Yeah, process and the journey rather than the destination. I mean, I guess talking about what we were speaking to earlier, if you were just, automatically excellent at something, that would be wonderful in some ways, but you would lack that whole journey of how you got there. It seems like it would have less meaning. And then even in, creative endeavors that I do, if I'm doing a documentary film, what ideally I want to have a nice product at the end of it, but what I always remember is kind of like those moments along the way, in terms of like doing interviews, working with colleagues on it, or like creating music and whatnot. That's what I remember. So for me, it's definitely the journey and process.
Cool. I like that. Okay, well, thanks everybody. I think that wraps up our episode nicely. Put a bow on it.
Toot, toot.
So thank you everyone, and I've been Jared Gates.
I've been David Roger.
I'm Charles.
And I'm still Josh.
See you everyone.
Thanks for listening to Nova Kooks. Join us next time for more kooky surf moments, beginner surf tips, music and movie talks, questions from Charles, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Thanks and be well.